Ottawa, Canada, the world in general. Today we're talking about Trump again, and we are going to be reflecting on a very important Sesame Street lesson. And like Trump has been against PBS in general, and I guess not too fond of Sesame Street, but this particular sort of presentation in Sesame Street says a lot to what's going on with Trump. And let's listen in and let's watch.
One of these things is not like the other. One of these things just doesn't belong. Can you tell which thing is not like the other before I finish my song? Now look very carefully, because one of these things just doesn't belong here. Is it the apple? Or the ice cream cone? Or the mitten? Or the hamburger? Well, if you guessed, this thing is not like the other. If you guessed, this thing just doesn't belong. If you guessed, this thing is not like the other, well then, you're absolutely correct.
So, what does this have to do with Trump? Well, I think that people really need to pay attention to what's going on here with Trump. I mean, Trump is definitely, in my view, and to many people, acting in a bizarre way. But there is a growing amount of people that are trying to suggest that, well, maybe Trump is just getting senile or something is going on in his head that making he's getting some kind of mental illness. But I can tell you from my view that I do not think that is the case. And the reason why this particular Sesame Street presentation is relevant is people need to think, okay, Trump is nearly 80. Now you tell me how many 80-year-olds that you know that are suffering from some kind of mental illness, how many of them act like Trump? How many of them act in this sort of deranged, demagogic, crazy, bizarre way? Look at former U.S. President Biden, for example, perhaps of a somewhat similar age, and look at all the other 80-year-olds that you know and that you can think of. When 80-year-old males get and have a sort of a mental illness, what do they get? Well, how do they become? Well, they become more baby-like. They become sort of infantile. They become disoriented, passive. We have, the situation going, unfortunate situation with Bruce Willis, like, look at all the 80-year-olds that you know of politicians. Look at all of the 80-year-olds you know of United States politicians in that age group. Look at the Clintons. Look at, all the 80-year-old you know of in political history, and the males in particular that suffer from various mental illness. How many of them act like Trump? Trump is not acting, and also to bear in mind, Trump is also a grandfather. Now, what do we know of men who are grandfathers? Grandfathers are very proud of their grandchildren, and when they're not mentally ill, they try to, generally speaking, that I can recall, take great pride in trying to leave a better place for their grandchildren. They act in a certain sort of jovial way, and Trump is not acting like any grandfather, someone of any 80-year-old that I know about. So this is why this particular Sesame Street presentation about one of these things is not like the other. People need to step back, and if Trump is not acting this way because he is mentally ill, that is just mental ill is just that people are resorting to is just a way of trying to take some sort of shortcut in explaining, well, Trump is deranged. He must be acting mentally ill. Someone can be deranged for various reasons other than mental illness. And I think that people need to start looking deeper at what the actual reason why Trump is acting bizarre other than mental illness before the world starts to suffer an irrevocable disaster, whether it's world war or some type of disaster from a megalomaniac who now says that he is only constrained by his so-called morality. He's not constrained by international law. He's not constrained by the U.S. Congress. He's not constrained by the U.S. Constitution. These types of statements that he's making is not somebody who is based, I am not a doctor, but I can tell you from my layperson's understanding of people that I know of who are suffering from mental illness, these type of statements that he's making is not somebody consistent with anybody suffering from mental illness. They are quite thoughtfully executed statements that pertain to what, in my view, for lack of a better word, is a satanic, ideological state of mind where people are not seen to be spiritual and biological beings, where everybody and everyone is seen to be an opportunity to self-aggrandizement for transactional basis in order to to increase one's power and the power of and one's circle in a sort of kleptocracy, which is a government by thieves. I mean, the statements that Trump is coming up with is quite deliberate. This is not the sign of someone who's mentally ill. So for those people who don't just assume that Trump is suffering from mental illness, what do you think is going on here? This is not the actions of, first of all, his statements is not the action of somebody who's mentally ill. They're quite deliberate. They are quite dark and lacking in any empathy for anyone. And this is someone who is cast with control over the nuclear weapons and a power like the United States. While people are kind of sleeping at a switch in Congress and engage in a lot of partisanship, people need to wake up. What's going on here is not normal in the slightest. It is not the manifestation of mental illness. So what exactly is going on with what our Premier Ford says is Trump 2? What is your take on this? One of these things is not like the other, and that is Trump. Trump is not like the other. So what is going on here? What is your take on what's going on? What's going on here is not normal, and we need to expand our human consciousness to actually understand what is going on here if we are going to collectively survive this. Because what is going on here with Trump is clearly not within the realm of conventional analysis. And if people, in my view, want to save the world, save our planet from the likes of Trump, they need to quickly expand their consciousness beyond and above what they are being told into a state of mind where things which you may find to be way out in impossible may be something that we need to consider as being possible. What is your take? Thanks for watching another edition of The Auto Market.